Hello, Penn Staters, and thank you for tuning into the Football Letter podcast. This week, we are speaking with Penn State football letterman receiver Matt Zanellato. Matt is a 2014 Penn State grad, earning a degree in human development and family studies. Notably, he was an all Big Ten academic selection with the Nittany Lions, and he also danced in Thon, and we know that that's important to him, and we'll get his thoughts on what that opportunity was like for him. He's currently the wide receivers coach at UMass, which means he's going to be returning to Beaver Stadium this season. Penn State hosts UMass on Saturday, October 14th for homecoming. Matt's quickly become a coaching veteran with previous coaching stops at Saginaw Valley State University, Lock Haven University, Western Michigan, and Davenport University too, which I believe is in Michigan. Congrats on the promotion at UMass for Matt. He arrived there in January of 2022. 18 months later, got promoted to wide receivers coach, obviously having an impact there early on. We're going to talk with him about his days at Penn State, how he's turned into a coaching veteran and being a positions coach at this early point in his career, which is a significant deal. And we're also going to get into a few other topics with him. It's going to be a good conversation, a fun conversation. We're thrilled that Matt is joining us this week on Football Letter Podcast. Matt Zanellato, how are you doing today, sir? We're thrilled you can join us.
Hey, John, how's it going? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to get into your days at Penn State. But currently you're the wide receivers coach at UMass. You arrived there about 18 months ago, recently got promoted to wide receivers coach, and you've had a bunch of coaching stops early on, which we understand that's how the coaching profession goes. At what point did you know that you wanted to stay involved with the game and that meant wanting to be a coach?
Honestly, I really didn't make the decision until pretty late in my career. It was kind of around my 5th year at Penn State, when I was kind of figuring out, I was kind of initially had the intentions of wanting to go to grad school and, use my HFS degree to become a psychologist and kind of go in that field. And honestly, it was something that Coach Franklin kind of mentioned during one of our team meetings my last year. We kind of mentioned he was kind of talking about how, how passionate and how driven and how hard sometimes the position coaches are on us as players. And one of the reasons he talked about that is that, coaches have such a passion for the game and have so much they want to give back to the game. And, at the end of the day, with my HFS degree, I really just knew at the end of the day, I wanted to have some type of role, some type of profession where I was giving back to the community and working with people to kind of help better themselves. And, kind of my 5th year in school, once I realized, hey, I've had all this experience at Penn State as a football player, playing for 3 different coaching staffs and seeing a lot of different coaching styles, and be able to use that knowledge and that experience during my 5 years at Penn State to also turn into a profession as a coach. It kind of became the best of both worlds, because obviously I have so much love for the game and, loved my 5 years at Penn State, but then also have an opportunity to, use all that passion and use that experience to, coach people and to kind of help them reach the best version of themselves and grow as a player was kind of something that really meant a lot to me. And not just as a coach, but what they do on the field, but also helping them mature and, grow up as young men and go through that transition, going from high school to college is kind of something that really, spoke to me and something that I, really kind of, like I said, was the best of both worlds. I get to have impact on my community and work with people, work with young people, but also use that football as well. All that experience I had playing at Penn State was kind of, like I said, the best of both worlds.
So at Penn State, you played for Joe Paterno, Bill O'Brien, James Franklin. You experienced a lot at Penn State. You could have left and you decided to stay at Penn State. What motivated you to honor that commitment? And kind of what did you see during that time that really kept not only the football program together, but the university together?
Yeah, I mean, it's always funny when people ask me where I played and I mention Penn State and they ask me what years. Every single time I say 2011 to 2015, I can kind of see the wheels churning and I see them thinking about, wait, what years? And I was like, yes, I was there during the Paterno. I always say my freshman year was the whole scandal. And I always tell people, as a freshman going through that entire transition and that 2011 year, you really didn't, as a young player, you really didn't have anything compared to. So you really didn't understand what it was like to go through a normal college football season without all the sideshows and everything else that was going on. And it wasn't until I got older in the program and went through a relatively normal football season that I got to realize how unique and how different that was. But, obviously, that's one of the things that people don't realize, especially today with the transfer portal, people being allowed to transfer from an FBS school to an FBS school without sitting out with the one-time transfer exception. People are used to that being the normal, MO these days. But, when the whole sanctions hit and the whole scandal hit, what people don't realize is that not only did the NCAA say that every scholarship player at Penn State was allowed to transfer and not sit out a year and transfer to another Division I school, but Division I, you're allowed 85 scholarships. Well, the other kind of caveat of that entire situation was if we transferred to another school, our scholarship didn't go against their 85 count. So every school, that wanted to come and try to recruit Penn State players, it was a complete win-win situation for them because, when you deal with transfers, you have someone come in and you hope they're going to be able to impact. But if they don't, they're still in that 85 scholarships, it's still in the books. But for us, the fact that we were able to transfer, not sit out a year, and not go against their 85 scholarships, the way I explain to people is, in theory, all 85 scholarship players at Penn State could have transferred to a Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin, and those schools could have had 170 scholarship players and would have been legal. So all those schools kind of coming out the woodwork and trying to re-recruit all the guys on the team, and especially for us younger players, I redshirted that year, and when the sanctions hit, basically one of the things was a 4-year bowl ban. And for us younger players on the team, for us redshirt freshmen, we were basically signing up to play for the next 4 years without ever going to a bowl game again. And I truly do credit, the senior leadership we had on the team, Mike Motti, Michael Zordich, Jordan Hill. Like, those guys were truly the glue that held that program together. I mean, I always think back to kind of what they said during that press conference when they said, one man didn't build this program, one man's not going to take it and tear it down. And to have that senior leadership to kind of hold the team together. And obviously some guys did transfer, I'd say about half dozen to a dozen guys did end up leaving. But overall, the core of that team stayed there. And not only did we stay there, but during those 4 years with the 20 scholarship reduction and the bowl ban and the $60 million fine and all those sanctions, my 4 years, after my redshirt year, we never dropped below 500. We were 9-3, 8-4 those 2 years with O'Brien, and then we were 7-6, I believe, 2 years with Franklin. So the fact that not only was the core of that team able to stay there, but also for us to still perform at a high level I truly believe is a testament to the university. And I truly do believe there's very few institutions that would be able to go through such a situation, such a impactful event. I always say it's one of the largest scandals in college football sports, and to be able to not just make it through, but still perform and still kind of carry that success with honor that Paterno kind of instilled in that entire program. And I truly, credit him and credit the leadership on the team that kind of held the team together. So you really can't say enough good things about their leadership between those three guys.
That's so well said, Matt. And when we were at the Rose Bowl pep rally in 2017 to close out the 2016 season, Mike Motti spoke at the pep rally, and people were saying, without you, without what your group did and that team did, like, we wouldn't be here. Not only did Penn State survive, you think about winning the Big Ten a few years later, going to the Rose Bowl. And so just an amazing, amazing group. You said success with honor, and in that mode of success with honor, in addition to the all Big Ten academic selection, your senior year at Penn State, I believe it was your senior season, you were honored for your public service work along with Ben Klein, and you were involved with Lift for Life. What inspired you to want to be so involved during your time at Penn State to be a true student athlete and to give back to the community?
I mean, honestly, Penn State Lift for Life was such a great organization. I know Ben Klein was really the front runner on that. He was kind of the lead on that, but going through that, helping raise money for that, and then it was one of those things that when I went to Thon my freshman year and my first time being in the BJC and seeing 16,000 people come together for such a good cause, it was one of those things that it was my freshman year that I really spent time there. And I was like, this is something I want to be a part of. Like, this is something I want to be involved with. And I was very fortunate over my time, at Penn State and being so involved in Thon. I got super close with a bunch of different Four Diamond families. The Beecher family, Shane Beecher, is actually the father in that family. He's actually on the Four Diamond board, and being so close with so many different Four Diamond families and building relationships with them over the years, and just seeing, the joy in those kids' faces. They go through so much, those families, and even, having them come over to the football building for the Make-A-Wish tour, throughout the years, and just seeing the smiles on their faces and seeing how much it meant to them. And, it was one of those things that, we talk about success with honor. It's, just because, a Penn State football player, the creed and just so much of what Paterno instilled in us is that, you give back to the community. And I was very fortunate seeing this community come out and give so much to the football program. It was one of those things I just wanted to give back, and I wanted to be involved and spend time. And I was very fortunate, to be able to dance my senior year. And, that was one of those experiences I wouldn't trade for the world. It was definitely a meaningful experience for me. I was happy. I tried dancing the cheers before that and finally got it done my last year. And, very much enjoyed dancing in Thon. It was an unbelievable experience. And it was also I enjoyed coming back. You mentioned I was coaching at Lock Haven. I was able to come back for Thon, and it was the year that Nick Scott was dancing, and it was fun seeing him go through that and everything. And then Charlie Schumann danced as well. So seeing, because before when I got there, the football team, we did the pep rally and all that kind of stuff. But I truly enjoyed being on the floor and being at Thon as much as I could. And, after I graduated, seeing Schumann dance, seeing Nick Scott dance, and seeing other football players kind of pick up the baton and carry it on and continue to have that impact with Thon, meant a lot to me.
When you look at being involved in Thon and Live for Life and having the full student athlete experience, how much do you think that you grew, and in what ways did you grow, not only as a player, but also as a person during your time at Penn State?
I mean, so much. I mean, I always tell recruits these days that, obviously it's the biggest decision of your life where you decide to go to school. And I always say, it's a 4 or 5 year decision that's going to set you up for the next 40, 50 years of your life, where you're going to go to school. A lot of times I remember my freshman year when we got introduced as an entire class. I think it was Todd Kolka, the academic advisor, or one of the guys in the building mentioned that, hey, in this room, someone here is going to be someone's best man at their wedding. These are some of the best friends you're going to meet throughout your time. And, I think as crazy as it was, when people always, like I said, I mentioned to people how I was there my freshman year, the scandal, people were always like, wow, that must have been really tough. That must have really sucked to go through that. But I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And seeing the guys above me and seeing how resilient our team was and, going through that, it was it's hard to kind of put in words, but it's one of those things that just felt like the right thing to do. I mean, seeing kind of what Joe Paterno built through that institution, and not just, in the program, but young men growing to be the best version of themselves. Like, one of the things I always tell, my players is that you always have to look out for the younger guys. And I was very blessed to have such good leadership above me and players that, took care of me. Like, I always think back to my end of my freshman year, I was going through some difficult times. And I remember Mike Motti and Mike Zordich reaching out and just checking in on me and be like, hey, are you okay? How's everything going? And seeing that from older guys on the team that you look up to that truly did care about you and truly were empathetic and wanted to reach out and looked out for you was something that I always say, it's a rare place where it's kind of just built into the tradition there, that when you're an older guy on the team, you take care of the younger guys. Like we were talking before we started that, like Nick Scott and Trace McSorley are both from Northern Virginia. And as soon as they got on campus, I'm like, okay, those are my guys. They're from Northern Virginia. I got to take care of them. And it's kind of just building that tradition and that brotherhood of making sure you take care of the younger guys. Because you all go through it. I mean, there's always days, whether it be the dog days of camp or some point freshman year, winter workouts where you're just in the trenches and, things are tough. And having kind of that brotherhood of guys looking out for each other and being, staying in touch and making sure that everyone, that you have brothers around you that care about you, that want what's best for you and are going to take care of you. I can't say enough good things about it. And, throughout those 5 years, I truly, when I was going through my recruiting process, I knew I wanted to go somewhere that was a college town. And my brother at the time was attending Penn State and coming to a game at Penn State and Beaver Stadium and seeing that community come out and to spend time in State College. I knew that was somewhere I wanted to spend my next 4 or 5 years. So, it's an unbelievable institution. And I'd say one of my favorite things about my time there was also how close the entire athletic department was. We weren't, as football players, over at the Lash building, we're kind of tucked away in our own little corridor, but also building friendships across the athletic department with different sports teams. My mom played volleyball, my sisters played volleyball, so being friends with the volleyball players and some lacrosse, hockey guys, basketball players, just kind of building friendships across the athletic department outside the football team was also something I truly did enjoy.
Yeah, and those bonds that you talk about, I mean, at the Alumni Association, we tell students when you graduate, like you're just getting started being a Penn Stater. And so, being part of that letterman fraternity, you were recently back on campus. You were saying before we started recording for golf outing, and you're telling the stories when you're back on campus for those letterman events, and you're talking with guys, not only who you played with, but also maybe making some new friendships with players from different generations. What were some highlights for you when you were back on campus for the golf outing and some other things? And also, how meaningful was it to be able to spend some time with James Franklin?
It was awesome. I mean, like, I was very fortunate. Obviously every year I get the invite to the golf outing, and coaching in Michigan 5 of my first 6 years, it was kind of difficult to make it out. The end of June to make it to that golf outing, and I was very fortunate that my vacation started just before that weekend that they had the golf outing, the Letterman weekend, and coming back to campus, it's just it's kind of hard to describe. When you're driving back to State College and you see the stadium and you get to see, you kind of get all those feelings of, all that nostalgia of remembering all those times you had in State College, driving downtown. It's crazy driving downtown these days, all the sky rises going up, all these apartments. I'm like, geez, they're really doing up the place downtown. I mean, they're unbelievable sky rises, those apartments. Like, those were not around when I was in school. But, coming back and spend some time, I was fortunate. I got to golf with Jason Kabinda. He was a couple years behind me at Penn State, and we were in the same foursome for the golf outing. I was giving him a hard time. There were a couple times I outdrove him, and I was like, all right, I'm going to tweet at the lines right now, let them know that I outdrove their starting fullback. But no, it was awesome, spending time. And also, like, with the sanctions, I mean, one of the things that Coach O'Brien did when the sanctions first hit, he reached out to all the lettermen, and I think we had 400 lettermen come back to State College and talk to the team, and I remember Franco Harris talking and spending time with lettermen there. And then also, I'll never forget the week of that scandal when we played Nebraska at home. And one of the coolest things that Super Turno kind of built was the Penn State Alumni Association that Wally Richardson now is in charge of. And it's very rare that colleges out there that us lettermen are treated as well as we are when we come back to State College. I mean, the fact that we are given basically sideline passes for life is something that, not a lot of institutions out there have. People talk about all the time that, like, they go back to their colleges and, they don't know the coaching staff. No one really knows who they are. And they're not really, they're not given the same type of treatment that we're at Penn State we are given. And that was something that Super Turno kind of built and grew. And I'll never forget that game versus Nebraska, after that whole scandal hit, where there were, I think, 900 lettermen. I remember Tom Bradley telling us during a team meeting that, there were lettermen that were CEOs and extremely, driven, very successful individuals, lettermen, who are sleeping in their cars in the Walmart parking lot, wanting to come back to make sure they were here for this game. And I just will never forget, before that game, we prayed with the Nebraska team at midfield. And I'll always remember seeing the aerial shot of our team and Nebraska's team coming together, and you just see this entire enclosure of, I think there were 800 lettermen that were there on the sidelines for that game, because they knew they needed to come back. That was a game they needed to be there for us. And as a player, seeing that support from the lettermen and realizing that just kind of how much bigger this program is, like the tradition you hear about all the time, playing for Paterno, but seeing it first and, live and in color, and seeing all those lettermen come back and support you really did mean a lot going through that time.
So as we said, and I'm sure you've got the date circled on your calendar, so October 14th, I think UMass announced this before you got there in 2020, but either way, you will be coming back to Beaver Stadium this fall with UMass. And by the way, UMass has a legit schedule this year, and I believe UMass is an independent. You're playing Auburn, you're playing Penn State, you're going out to New Mexico State, which, look, that's a cross-country trip. That's no easy task. And so, kudos to the UMass scheduling department, and you're going to have a legit season, Matt. What do you think the significance will be for you when you're back at Beaver Stadium October 14th? Obviously coaching against Penn State, but, still being in this environment in Happy Valley, and how will you try to balance maybe going out of your way to say hi to some guys or chatting for a few minutes? Because I would imagine you'll be having a lot of emotions that day.
Oh, no, without a doubt. It was actually funny. One of our current players at UMass, Tyler Rudolph, started his career at Penn State and then transferred to UMass. And I remember when I saw Penn State announce the games and they announced that we were playing them for their homecoming game, I sent him a quick screenshot and I said, "Dang, Tyler, I know they're excited for us to come back to Penn State, but I didn't have to make it homecoming just for us." I was just teasing him about that, but obviously extremely excited about it. I mean, as a young coach, you always have dreams of wanting to coach back at your alma mater and coach in Beaver Stadium again, having spent 5 years playing in it. And, getting an opportunity, I was joke around and say, I had dreams of coaching in Beaver Stadium. Now, in those dreams, I might have been on the other sideline, but hey, I'll take it. I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to come back to Happy Valley. I was joking around when I came back for the Letterman golf outing. I went and saw Spider Caldwell, who was our equipment manager, and he was there as a student in '82 and then was full-time in '86. got the head equipment manager gig, and he was from '86 till 2014, I believe, was when he basically stepped away from being the equipment manager, and now he runs Beaver Stadium. And his office is in that Letterman lounge right there. You want to talk about taking a blast from the past? You go to see his office, you see all the former Penn State memorabilia. He's got unbelievable pictures. And I would say Spider is one of my favorite human beings I got to meet throughout my time at Penn State. I mean, you want to talk about someone that is a bridge for generations and decades of Penn State football. And that's why I'm so happy for him to be back in Happy Valley and be running Beaver Stadium. And I was joking with him. I'm like, hey, well, pregame, when we're there, before kickoff, and, I'm not, I'm out in the field, usually just walking around doing laps and hanging out as the players are getting ready, getting taped up. I might have to sneak over to Letterman Lounge and sneak up there and go say hi to him and say hi to some guys. But, obviously I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to come back to Happy Valley and coach a game at Beaver Stadium. I was telling our players, a couple of my younger receivers, talking about, I'm like, yeah, it's homecoming. There'll be 107,000 plus. And I'm actually excited and happy the fact that we get to play Auburn week one, but earlier our second game of the season, because at least our players will get an opportunity to kind of see, 90, 100,000. I'm not sure exactly what Auburn fits, but it's the first game for Auburn, so I know they're going to be juiced. So I'm kind of happy that our team gets an opportunity to see that loud environment and realize how loud it's going to be when we do go to Penn State. Obviously, it won't be as loud at Auburn, but it'll be close. And last season we played at Texas A&M, but it was the back end of the season. It was a miserable, cold, wet, rainy game, so it wasn't nearly as loud as what Texas A&M truly is. So I'm very excited. I know our players are juiced about the opportunity to play those two big time games. And like you mentioned, New Mexico State and Auburn will both be on ESPN at the beginning of the year. So I know our players are excited about the opportunity.
Yeah, we're definitely going to check out the game when you're at Auburn. We'll let our alumni know. I mean, of course, Penn State was at Auburn last year. Winning the game helped, but beyond that, like really, the game day atmosphere was just it was different. It was nice. I think you'll enjoy the trip. It was a little bit different than going to Indiana, Iowa, Purdue, which we seem to go out there like every other year, and so it was nice to going down to Auburn.
It was funny when I was back to the Letterman golf outing. Obviously Terry Smith was the corners coach when I was playing, and Anthony Poindexter, Dex. He was at UVA when I was coming out of high school. So, Coach Poindexter recruited me for a short period of time when I was coming out of high school because I'm from Northern Virginia. So I met him a few times and took a junior day visit to UVA. I actually went for their UVA Virginia Tech game. And, I was telling him at the golf outing, if you were to tell me 8 years ago when I was still playing that 8 years later, I'd be coaching wide receivers that are going against Terry Smith and Anthony Poindexter's DBs, I'd say you're crazy. So it's just it's fun that, kind of see things come full circle and, get an opportunity to play against my alma mater is something that I'm truly excited about.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you played at Beaver Stadium, going through the tunnel, what it's like to play in front of 110,000. What does make playing at Beaver Stadium? What made that so special for you?
I mean, it's one of those things where it's really hard to understand how loud 100,000+ people are. I mean, and it was one of those things I didn't realize. I kind of had the perception that, obviously Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State are in the 100,000+, and, the other Big Ten schools are in the, 50 to 80,000 roughly. But I thought that it was a sliding scale in the fact that when I worked at Western Michigan, I thought the MAC, when I got to Western Michigan, it was a year after the Cotton Bowl, after PJ Fleck left, and they lost the Wisconsin Cotton Bowl. And I thought that, other FBS, schools would have, 40, 50, 60,000, capacity. And when I, coached in the MAC, realizing that, it's kind of more around the 20 to 30 to 40, it really put in perspective for me to see, how special Penn State is and Beaver Stadium is, how loud that is. And, I was, it's one of the funny things I talk about when I come across other Big Ten players. Schoonmaker, the tight end from Michigan, his younger brother was taking a visit to UMass. And one of my favorite things to do when I come across other Big Ten players, I ask them, what's the loudest, most intimidating environment you played in? And then also, what's your favorite stadium? And, he obviously said Penn State's the loudest. And I always say the difference is at Michigan, I was very fortunate because, Josh Gaddis was at Michigan from 19 and 21, and our offense coordinator at University of Massachusetts, Steve Kasula, was with him at Michigan. So when I was at Saginaw Valley State, our season was over, and I got to go down to Michigan to the Big House and watch that 2021 Michigan Penn State or Michigan Ohio State game where they blew the doors off Ohio State and won that game. And then I actually went to the Big Ten Championship as well the next week and got to see him play Iowa. And the one thing about Michigan Stadium is that it just goes kind of far and out. I would say it's almost like a salad bowl. It's more like this. And obviously Ohio State has the horseshoe, but Penn State's goes more up and has the upper deck. And that sound just gets trapped right on top of you. And it's so loud that obviously it's a different experience as, an offensive player, because usually we're on the field. I always remember Matt McGowan being on the field looking at the student section, telling them to shut up because third down, we're trying to get a line call in or trying to communicate. But usually on offense, the fans aren't completely losing their mind until it's a touchdown. On defense, that place is jumping. The clip that I always see on social media when it resurfaces is I believe the 2019 Michigan game where they called the timeout on the first play of the game, and they were playing like Mo Bamba before the game, and the music blasting. They had to call a timeout, and it's like that type of atmosphere. 107, I think there are some games 111, 112,000 people. You just can't simulate that type of noise. And it's one of those things, until you're in that stadium and you see it, it's very difficult to imagine that many people. And people always ask, what's it like playing that stadium? Honestly, you get so used to it that when you do go to the other Big Ten stadiums, you go to the Purdue's and Illinois and Indiana's, and it's 50, 60,000 people. You're like, wow, it's quiet around here. I can hear everything. It almost seems like it's like, wow, this is what they play in front of most games. And it's like, yeah, like you don't really realize how blessed you are to be at Penn State and to play. I always remember, I think it was my sophomore, junior year, where there might have been a couple of games where there was like 99 or 98,000. And people are like, oh, Sandy Barber's got to lower these ticket prices. I mean, it's only 99,000 people. It's not 100,000 people. This is nothing. And then Penn State fans are giving her flack for not having over 100,000 people. And it's like 99,000 people are still a lot of fans, but it's crazy how Penn State, that bar is set so high. And, it's, like I said, I can't wait to get back and to see it.
Yeah, you made a couple really good points, Matt, that I just want to follow up on. I remember, even growing up like in the early 2000s or, over the last 20 years, there would be like 97, 98,000. And I remember, some reporters or papers just sort of trying to take a shot at Penn State saying, well, they only had 98,000 people show up on Saturday. And I'm thinking, what does that tell you about
Penn State? That's more than there's 132 Division I schools. There are only 10 that have the capacity to be over 100,000 people. So yeah, exactly. To your point, the fact that when it's 98, 99,000, they're trying to take a shot like, oh, it's only 99,000 people. It's like, that's more than 90% of games out there across the stadium that same day.
Yeah. And that Michigan game, I remember, we were there, and I just remember thinking, this is the only place in the world where this would happen, where the other team can't even get a snap off. And, they're coming right off the sideline. They've been prepping for the whole week. They came into the field knowing this is, you would think this is what we're going to run, and they still weren't able to get the snap off, which, I mean, to your point, speaks to the passion of the Penn State fan base. So you're listening to the Football Letter podcast. We are speaking with Penn State football letterman and Penn State graduate, Matt Zanellato. Matt is the current receivers coach at UMass. He was an academic All-Big Ten selection at Penn State, Danston Thon. We've still got a couple quick hit questions for you, Matt, but just want to take a moment here to thank you for joining us. This has been a really great to catch up with you. So we know coaching is 24/7, 365. When you do have a little bit of downtime, or even, maybe a little time in the summer, if you're not coaching football, if you're not getting your players ready for game day, what do you like to maybe do to rewind a little bit?
Honestly, so I'm very close to my family. I got 2 younger sisters and an older brother, and they're all still living in Northern Virginia. So typically when I get some time off, I like to go back home and see my family. These past few weeks of vacation, obviously went to Penn State for the golf outing, went to Ohio to visit a coaching buddy, and then went up to Saginaw. I still own a house out there and had to do some work to it, but I usually make it out to Northwest Indiana. My grandparents live in Crown Point, and I go out there typically for 4th of July because my grandfather's birthday is around there. And but typically my downtime, I like to spend time with my family. Last summer I picked up golf for the first time. I always jokingly say there's 3 things in life you learn from your dad or your grandfather. It's hunting, golfing, and fishing. And my dad doesn't hunt, my dad doesn't golf. My dad and my grandfather fish. So I was asking my coworkers, I'm like, how much is a good price for your first set of golf clubs? And all of them are like, well, I got hand-me-downs from my dad. I'm like, well, my dad doesn't have clubs to give me. So I had to go buy my first set of golf clubs. So actually just recently last summer picked up the game of golf and trying to figure that out, which it is truly a humbling sport. Cause obviously as a Division I athlete, playing a bunch of different sports growing up, I wouldn't say things come easy to you, but like typically if you're of the caliber of being a Division I athlete, most sports you kind of pick up and are pretty good at. And golf is not that. So not for me so far. So I'm still frustrated, but I love it. And, living in the Northeast, I always jokingly say living in Michigan, especially where I was living, you could drive 2 hours and always be in any direction and still be Michigan. Up here in Amherst, I can drive 40 minutes north, be in Vermont or New Hampshire, drive 40 minutes west, be in New York, or drive 40 minutes south and be in Connecticut. So, I went up camping up in Vermont this past weekend, went out to Newport, Rhode Island for a couple of days, on the beach and that kind of stuff. So it's nice in the Northeast being able to have an opportunity to, get out in the nature and go hiking and that kind of stuff, go camping, but also go over to the beach and spend some time. Went out to Cape Cod last summer. We went out to Coach Brown's house, his beach house. I had a little staff outing out there, which was really nice. Got to see the Cape. So it's nice being in the Northeast, being able to be so close to the beach, but also be so close to other areas of the country. So, I love it up here. It's a beautiful, obviously Northeast is a little expensive, a little higher cost of living, but, I love it. Amherst is a great town. One of my really good friends, Sarah Sivian, she works for the Bleacher Report now. She covered hockey at Penn State, and she was a couple years behind me, but she's from the Boston area. And as soon as I got hired at UMass, she's like, "Oh, you'll love Amherst. It's like a smaller state college." And it kind of does have that feel. It's obviously not as big as Penn State, but we do have 25,000 undergraduate students. So it is a very large institution. And it does kind of have a state college vibe to it. So it's, it's nice being in the college town again.
Yeah, I can feel you about the cost of living. And by the way, Matt, the skyrise is in downtown State College. I've lived here almost all my life, and I'm still getting used to them. And so, yeah, we'll have, we are a weekend where folks will come back after graduating 50 years ago. Like, you could have graduated 5 years ago and come back to campus and be like, wait, where am I? And this used to be this, and this used to be that. So
no, even that parking lot that I'm used to be able to be at Primanti's Brothers, like P-Man, and be able to see across the parking lot to the Lions Den, which was like, a very, very big Penn State athlete bar. And you used to be able to see that across that big parking lot. Now it's a huge skyrise, and it's like, there's just so many of them. And I remember when I was in college, like the tallest buildings, obviously you had like Penn Towers that might be 15 floors, but there were few and far between. Most apartment complexes were 5 to 7 floors. But so to see these complete sky rises going up, it's insane. So different. Like you said, I graduated 8 years ago, driving through downtown for the golf outing. I'm like, geez, this downtown has changed.
Well, we have been speaking with Matt Zanellato. Matt, we have enjoyed speaking with you so much. We hope to have you back. We wish you all the success in the world and more at UMass this season and beyond. We'll certainly have our eyes out for you October 14th, also when you go down to Auburn and really all season long. And so, Matt, thank you so much for joining us on Football Letter Podcast, Matt. We really appreciate you. Matt Zanellato, everyone.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Give me 5, everybody. Yeah. All right. 50 years ago, some of you know what I'm talking about. We had the privilege of playing in this Orange Bowl. 3 weeks ago at Beaver Stadium, we had 45 of us back for a reunion. And I've got to thank the fans, we got to thank the university, the athletic department for the support that they give year in and year out. And I could be no prouder than to share this moment with all of our fans in Chicagoland and all of you that traveled from way out. We traveled. Marty is my sister-in-law. She graduated in 1950. No, 1970, 50 years ago. We hired a bus today. 17 of us are all here to help celebrate, and we appreciate you all being a part of that. So, we are Penn State! We are Penn State! We are Penn State! Thank you.
All right, a big round of applause for Rod Bratton.
Hello, Penn Staters, and welcome to the Football Letter Podcast. This week, we welcome Nick Bocci, a 2014 Penn State graduate. Nick earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Administration of Justice from the Wilkes-Barre campus And Nick is currently a standout volunteer for the Alumni Association. He is the president of our Florida Gulf Coast chapter. And his group received the fundraising award this summer at the Volunteer Awards held at the Hintz Family Alumni Center. Nick and his chapter put on a really great event during the bye week of Penn State football season last year. We're going to talk with Nick about his time at Penn State, what inspires him to give back and be a volunteer leader, have some fun, share some stories. Nick Bocci, welcome to the Football Letter Podcast. We're thrilled that you're joining us. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm well. How are you? Thank you for having me on, John.
Really looking forward to this conversation. Met Nick a few months ago and really looking forward to continuing to learn more about him and the Florida Gulf Coast chapter. So let's start at the beginning for you, Nick. Even when you were in high school, can you take us through the decision when you were looking to where you wanted to, continue your education? What made Penn State the school for you?
Well, surprisingly, Penn State wasn't actually the first school I went to. I actually got accepted to Valley Forge Military College outside of Philadelphia and did a semester there. But I'm not the traditional high schooler in the fact that I had a, let's say, quote unquote, good old summer right before my senior year. I joined the military at 17. So I spent my summer between my junior and senior year in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So I wanted to follow the military trajectory. And then when I had gotten to Valley Forge, it just kind of wasn't a good fit for me. Fast forward, I finally left mid-semester and went back up to northeastern Pennsylvania, where I'm from, Wilkes-Barre, Scranton area, and decided that I was going to do my last semester of my first year at Luzerne County Community College. And with that, an actual former high school teacher of mine who was a professor at the community college taught a criminal justice or an intro to criminal justice course that I really caught on to. And then in doing research for where do I want to go, I saw Penn State Wilkes-Barre was one of the only, I think, 3 or 4 other satellite campuses in addition to University Park that offered the Administration of Justice degree. And I saw the multiple routes that you can go with that degree. And then from there, it just kind of exploded. I had a campus right in my backyard. It saved on, dorm fees and all that other stuff that comes with going out. I had the experience of already going away to school. I was already away for an entire summer without mommy and daddy in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, that's for sure. So that was a rude awakening, and I definitely came back more matured. But that ultimately, the proximity and the quality of degree, obviously, was a big factor in me going to Penn State.
Thank you for sharing that story, Nick. And I think it's also a really good example of there are 24 Penn State campuses. The number is 96% of Pennsylvania residents live within 30 miles of a Penn State campus.
Yes.
And so beyond University Park, there are a lot of different routes, a lot of different paths that Penn Staters can take in earning their degree. And so really glad that you shared that story, Nick. Thanks for that insight.
Absolutely.
For the Florida Gulf Coast chapter, we have, last I checked, I believe we have like 14 or 15 active chapters in Florida. It's our most active state beyond Pennsylvania. We're going to get into some of the specifics of your chapter, but even to start, maybe can you share a little bit about where geographically your chapter is located in Florida, and just kind of share some things that are top of mind for your chapter year round?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's actually an interesting thing because I was actually counting yesterday the other chapters in other states, and I didn't know that as well. But yeah, Florida outside of Pennsylvania has the most chapters of the Alumni Association to Florida. But we are geographically located smack dab in between Fort Myers, Florida, and Tampa, Florida. We are the Gulf Coast, which pretty much encompass anywhere from north of Port Charlotte all the way up to where Tampa's reach is. Obviously, as far west as the coast and as far east as Mayaca City. So our geographical imprint for Florida is rather large. I also had the benefit of being on the Naples board this time last year, as well as their secretary. And that also has a big area as far as its geographical reach too. But some of the big things that our chapter stands out, we obviously have Sarasota, Bradenton. We're big on spring training. I mean, within an arm's reach, we got the Orioles spring training here. Within a drive you can be, and we hosted we had a alumni day at the Marauders Stadium while the Pirates played their spring training game there. So that's a big draw, obviously, in springtime for us here. And then geographically, our area, not so much as Naples and some other state chapters on the East Coast, but we get snowbirds. So football season, when it gets cold up north, everybody comes down here and they want a place to watch it. So that happens to hit right at the same time that we're getting an influx of not only Penn State fans, but people in general. So our busy time of the year is definitely coming up. That's for sure. It's on the horizon, and we're excited for it.
In terms of year-round, Nick, what are some things that the chapter does to keep Penn Staters united in Florida?
So in addition to our 12 regular season watch parties, we also hosted this past year our bowl selection watch party. Didn't get as many people as we liked because obviously you could just do that from the convenience of your home. But we did have some crazy Penn Staters like myself out there glued to the TV because me and my buddies personally, aside from the chapter, we've gone to every bowl game since the you probably saw me. I've made ESPN and I've been on the big screen with my cowboy hat at AT&T Stadium. So we've been to every game, every bowl game since 2014. We've just made this tradition. We go wherever every year. So with that, we try to keep it to just the football stuff during the football season, so we don't get and lose sight of getting people too confused with events. But beyond that, our board makes a conscientious effort to have at least 1 to 2 events every 2 to 3 months. This time last year, we only had one event. That was our blue and white game back in April. That was graciously put on and hosted by a fellow Penn Stater that was at a bar down in Inglewood, Florida. Unfortunately, they're no longer there. Things fell apart with that location, but we've already doubled the amount of events we've had since last year. We are working on a formal Thon Gala for February to support Thon. We just sent away a senior who's dancing as a couple this year at Thon, so we're definitely going to be sending our support her way. We're working on a golf tournament to support Thon and the scholarship fund. And in addition to that, we're also on the 24th having our second happy hour, which we hope to make a bi-monthly event where we go to a different bar or location throughout the Sarasota, Bradenton area and just meet fellow Penn Staters, take advantage of the happy hour prices, and do what the association was designed to do, which is to bring Penn Staters together.
And so you mentioned the watch parties. What are some of the things that you do to make the watch parties fun, engaging, and kind of distinguish your watch parties and make them the place to be on game day?
Well, we try to extend the Penn State flare box that the association sends to us as long as we can. And we realize that we're not going to get, enough to supply freebies for every game, and that was never the intent. But we go, and our board, myself and other members, Scott Brooks, our vice president, Matt Newman, our treasurer, Eric Wetzel, our treasurer, our secretary, Suzanne Tinley, our previous president emeritus, have gone above and beyond out of pocket and have just said we're taking that as a donation to the university. I mean, $50 here for some white pom-poms, so we had enough to give to the entire crowd of 60 that showed up for the Auburn game. Thankfully, last year, a couple donated these big lion paw prints with Lions connection information on the back of it. That was big. We put that out at tables. People were using them as fans of some of our hotter games. But I definitely, most recent addition that we're proudest of is I was able to trade on Letgo my patio furniture that we didn't use for a brand new wireless Bluetooth speaker. So now we're pumping Blue Band because we have an entire outdoor patio. It's perfect for us in the wintertime because the weather is absolutely beautiful. Not trying to rub it in or anything, but it is rather nice. And so we have the Blue Band pump in before the game. We get people involved. We pass around the cowbell. Everybody has a chance to shout it out. Everybody, we try to have a chance, different alumni shout, and we are in response. So just keeping the crowd engaged. And we even had our waiter from Applebee's come out and was like, I was born in State College. And then from there on, he started wearing on his own Penn State shirts every game day that he would come out. And so our reach has definitely even gone beyond that of who are just alumni. So we're definitely happy with the involvement. We're happy people can get involved and cheer on. And I was at the Rose Bowl physically, but the watch party, the reports I was getting, but where people were just having fun with that cowbell and going to town on it. And that's all you could ask for. It's just people having fun and being together.
Yeah, you've got Penn Staters together. You've got the cowbell. You've got blue band music. I mean, it feels like game day. Yeah, and if you're recruiting Penn State fans, you got the waiter from Born in State College. And you don't worry about rubbing it in with the weather. And so when we were down at the Outback Bowl for Tampa Bay, the pregame event was at the Yankees. It was one of their minor league ballparks.
I was there.
And I'm looking around
Stadium,
yeah, it was beautiful. Well, to your point, I'm looking around, I'm thinking, is this January 1st? Like, this is like 70 degrees. I'm like, and so, yeah, it's okay. You live in Florida, you get the perks. I also want to touch on, and we're going to get to this right now, the fundraising award that your chapter won for your work last season. And so very much in line with the watch parties, Penn State chapters, they use a watch party, get Penn Staters together. A lot of them fundraise for their scholarship. The impact goes beyond the field. And there's also, your chapter really went above and beyond last year in terms of community service. Can you talk a little bit about the event that you had last year, and kind of maybe the motivation and inspiration to give back, where I'll lead you in a little bit. Your chapter used Penn State's football bye week as a way to raise donations for your fellow community members who were in need after a hurricane touchdown in Florida.
Yeah. So, and I don't want to sound egotistical or anything like that, but the impetus and the idea, I was sitting outside on my porch on the hours right after the hurricane's eye had passed us, because where my house is located, I was able to actually, and thankfully, knock on wood, Sarasota was able to get the, let's just say, less intense side of the storm as it was coming across Florida. Fortunately, a portion of our chapter further south was definitely hit. I sat there and I said, at the time, I was a member of the Naples chapter, and I just saw on the news how places while I was in law school and used to Uber and take drop-offs to at Fort Myers Beach was leveled. I mean, places I was literally standing ordering a taco no more than 2 years before was 6 feet underwater. And I'm like, we can't sit here and do nothing. So I got the board together and I said, hey, I think we should do something to donate, whether it's to the Naples chapter or whether it's just in general. So we set up at Applebee's. Thankfully, we had the Northwestern game beforehand, and the Applebee's that we were at still didn't have power. So the 1-2 exits north of us did and agreed to host us there on short notice. Even with that, we were still able to get around 22 to 25 people. And what was touching was that we actually had a gentleman from Venice who had lost his house. And all he had was the stuff in his truck and his Penn State flags. And he sat there and he watched the game with us. And at the end, he shook our hands and he said, thank you. Because that's what he needed, was that release. So we collected the stuff the next week at our Applebee's location. And we were getting alumni who we never even knew were in the area or were involved with the club. They saw the flag on the road. They came in. They literally, some people even stopped to say, I'm going to Publix. I'm going to grab some food. I'll be right back. And we had so much stuff, we had to have a box truck take it all. And then in cooperation with Naples, I was able to coordinate with their vice president down there, Jennifer Sanchez, and their president, Neil Biggie, or their past president, Neil Biggie. I think their new president's Tom Riley now, but I was able to coordinate with them a drop-off. So we stopped off in Northport and we did a clothing drop-off because we just had so much at the Goodwill. And as my mom, who's a non-alumni, but is an avid fan like myself, we were driving down, we just kept commenting on the devastation, just places we had saw, just absolutely devastated. Boats literally picked up and put in people's front yards. It was, I'd never seen anything like it. And we were able and fortunate enough to go to a Naples Park Elementary School classroom, which was being used as a emergency shelter supply. And when we were there, a family actually stopped by and picked up some stuff and told us about their experience of being in one room while the storm waters rose up, but considered themselves lucky because their neighbors didn't have any homes and they still did. So I just basically said, and our board said, we can't sit here and we can't do anything and sit by our wayside. And, not again to sound cocky or hubris, but I didn't see Michigan or Ohio State alumni fans going out there and doing it, but we did. And our fans came out in droves. Our alumni people from across the street who weren't even affiliated with our organization just saw us getting so many donations. They came over with all of the dry goods in their house and a big 5-gallon water jug that they used for their water cooler and said, that's all we have, but we're giving it. So we're happy that we got the support that we did. And now moving forward, every bye week, we're going to be doing a donation, hopefully not for another hurricane, but we're going to be doing another donation and probably giving it to one of the local charities, and we're going to change it up every year. So it's a good tradition that we've started now.
Yeah, absolutely. At first, I just want to take a moment and say thanks, Nick, to you and your chapter. When I heard about that, it was just, just as a fellow Penn Stater, I thought this is what it's all about. But just to follow up on that real quick for you, emotionally, having, living there, seeing the devastation and the quick turnaround and seeing Penn Staters step up, when you were hearing folks saying, hey, I'm going to get some groceries and I'll be right back, or, I'll be here, the gentleman who, tragically lost his house and was there with the Penn State flags. From an emotional standpoint, what's going through your mind knowing that, in times of need, Penn Staters are stepping up?
If it doesn't make you emotional, there's something wrong. That's it. If you are a true Penn Stater and doing that stuff for the chapter at the time, listen, I was caught up in it all. You know what I mean? We needed to get the stuff into the truck. We needed to get things organized. I was running one thing after another, but it actually didn't strike me until actually recording the video for it and talking to our other chapters and talking to our other members and them just expressing their gratitude and seeing the impact that it had. And I remember commenting at our most recent NIL event to another big chip to Scott Brooks, our vice president, because he was a big proponent of it as well. And he was just like, exactly what you said. This is what Penn State's being all about. It goes beyond football. It goes beyond the school. You walk into that campus, you get that degree, something happens to you that when you see a fellow Penn Stater, it doesn't matter whether or not they could be wearing the opposing political side hat or support somebody else. They got that Penn State thing on, they're going to get a "we are." They're going to get a thank you. They're going to get a handshake, because everybody, for some reason, when they have the Penn State shirt on and is there to support the Penn State family, looks way beyond all of our flaws. And that's what's special. So yeah, it's emotional. And, I think a lot of people have expressed their emotion, and it was very emotional for me to see a lot of places that I had been to, went in, actually did business there, leveled, gone. And I see it now as an attorney working in the area. What I do is we're just seeing the devastation come in, and it's still being impacted. So in addition to that, we were able to actually do additional donations for our Christmas party through the Florida Power and Lights Fund to be able to get individuals some electricity back on. Because for weeks afterwards, I don't even think they had power on some of the areas affected closer to the water. So, but the emotion, it's definitely there. And like I said, if you read that and it doesn't give you the least little bit of butterfly in your stomach, then I don't want to say question being a fan, but that's truly what it means to be a Penn State alum for me.
Nick, we'll get you out of here on this question. This is a simple question, but it's not so simple. It's a short, simple question, but you can take it a lot of different ways. What has the Penn State Alumni Network meant to you in your life?
A great deal. I mean, while most people are probably at home watching or relaxing stuff, I'm sitting outside on the porch, looking at Canva, making updates for our Instagram, coming up with ideas, needlessly having 45-minute conversations with our treasurer, who's equally passionate about me, to just talk about the next upcoming week. For me, it's provided an opportunity to be able to, not in like a depressing, I have to look forward to something way, but now it's something always new to look forward to every single week. And it just so happens to be something Penn State. So there's no downside to that, right?
Nick Bocci, I love your enthusiasm. I love your passion. I think I need to start calling you every week just for like a pep talk, if you'll be there for me.
I'm always there for everybody. Coach, if you're listening, I volunteer my time. But absolutely anything. I love being passionate. I want to be the new NIL Nick.
You know what I mean? But yeah, I love the enthusiasm, and obviously I'll share my contact information with you. I'm always a phone call away. I always love it. And exactly to everybody's point who's listening, this is the type of connection that you can now make just by having a conversation with the fellow Penn Stater. You know, you never know. I was sitting at Naples, and one day I was sitting across from a previous sitting board of trustees member. So it's like you don't know who you're sitting talking to who has that. But the one thing that's all in common is you have the Penn State thing to talk about. So
that's the perfect way to cap our conversation. Nick Bocci, everyone, thank you so much for stopping by the podcast, Nick.
Absolutely, my pleasure. We are
Penn State.
Put that bitch on the bottom of my bag, then I got stop going.